Across the years, FromSoft have consistently made some of the best RPG games in the market, winning Game of the Year titles with Sekiro and Elden Ring, and the Dark Souls series having a phenomenal reputation. Even though all these games fall under the category of Souls, which is a whole genre that they spawned through Demon Souls, they are still undoubtedly one of the best publishers in the industry. I'm sure we've all seen games which try to replicate or take inspiration from the Souls games, these Souls-likes. Some more popular examples being Nioh, Mortal Shell, and the most recent Lords of the Fallen. And while I'm sure all these games have their strong points, like Nioh's combat, it is clear that none of them have come close to reaching the overall package of the FromSoft standard. All these Souls-likes miss the mark in some aspect that differs them from the quality of Souls games. So what is it? What makes FromSoft untouchable? Well, let's start with what we look for in any game, the gameplay. If you've played any Souls games, you'll know that it is typically harder than most other games out there, especially if it's your first time adjusting to Souls combat. It can feel very clunky at the start, the normal mobs are actual threats, and the bosses kick your ass over and over again. I think the Souls experience of being stuck on a boss for hours, if not sometimes days, is a universally known one by now. But at some point, we start seeing through the cracks of the boss's attacks. We notice that after the boss does this move, it immediately follows up with that move. We notice that after it misses this specific attack, we can get in 2 hits before it can move again. We start learning without the game forcing tutorials down our throats, and eventually we overcome that wall. FromSoft has managed to do this over and over again, with each boss being unique, having their own movesets, their own mechanics. And every time we learn more until we get good enough to move on. This is the beauty of FromSoft games. We are forced to improve by ourselves without the game holding our hands, making it an extremely satisfying experience when we see ourselves getting better. Take a minute's look at any Souls game and you'll be bombarded with atmosphere, and this is done without any long cinematic cutscenes. FromSoft establishes their atmosphere through its insanely detailed environments, enemy design, and music. For example, take a look at Irithyll of the Boreal Valley from Dark Souls 3, probably my favorite area in the game. To get to this area, you have to first make your way through the Catacombs of Karthus, a dark and grim underground cave. However, once you're out, you're greeted with one of the most breathtaking scenes I've ever seen in my years of playing video games. The bright moonlight shining over the city, the monumental buildings overlooking the lake, and the snow gently descending onto the Gothic-styled architecture. The enemies here resembled wretched knights and priests, and the music, the goddamn music. I don't even need to say anymore. This is atmosphere. Souls games have some of the best level designs in video games. The never-ending branching paths you take leaves room for boundless replayability. The game doesn't force you to do anything, you do what you want, and depending on what you do, you will go down a certain path. I read this post which perfectly describes Souls games level design. Souls' overarching design is so good because it is simply a sandbox that incentivizes fun behavior rather than being a theme park with endless scripted events. Instead of an NPC telling me to go find her missing keys, Dark Souls systems encourages me to set goals for myself, like farming a weapon, going to a certain area to pick up a ring, whatever. I feel like I'm an adventurer, on my own terms surviving against the game systems, rather than following a scripted path. Exploration is another huge factor. The areas unlocked by exploration are often locked behind cleverly hidden pathways that devs leave small hinting trails for. Think about the route to Smoldering Lake for an example. The Shaking Bridge is a big hint that devs left. Naturally, we want to try jumping and swinging to see if the bridge would break. It does. Then what can we do with this? There's no way the devs would program that in if there wasn't any purpose behind it. This is the thought process of unlocking hidden areas in Souls games, and it's beautiful. Furthermore, the interconnectedness between levels makes it feel like you're exploring one massive world rather than smaller individual stages, adding towards the overall immersion. The locations are unique and dynamic, allowing for fresh experiences throughout. The Souls worlds really are wonderful and a pleasure to explore. Finally, FromSoft does something that used to be common, but has long been lost over the years. They make games worth their money. FromSoft is a no-bullshit game developer. They take passion and pride in their work, and you can see it in their products very clearly. When you buy a FromSoft title, you don't have to second guess yourself whether it was a good decision or if it's going to be worth the money you spent. You know that you'll get a good product. That's how good the lineage of their games are. They make video games. They don't make movies or other types of studio video games. and they know that, so they focus on the aspects that make games great instead of all the other smaller details that don't really matter. And this is the core that differentiates them from other game developers that are only after monetization. Their games are pure, and that's what makes FromSoft untouchable.